but we're going to begin with the Lucy Letby case, Brian.
We are, and I'll say to the audience, I have a little bit of a croaky voice as well, but we're going to do our best today. And for us, this is a really important report. There is a lot to talk about. We're going to take it in a very measured way. But firstly, I want to absolutely thank the UnHerd journalist, David Rose, who contacted the UK column a few days ago to ask some questions about work that UK column had done way back in 2008, and that'll unfold as we do this report. But I want to say, first of all, that over the weekend I was able to see David Rose's report, Why the Letby Case Isn't Closed. Really excellent articles, simple, straightforward, but asking some key questions. And UK column encourage all of our viewers and listeners to go and have a look at that. Now, this was just a part of it. We're encouraging you to go and read the full article, but just one paragraph here, and it's about Dr. Dewi Evans. And let's have a look at this. It says, after offering his services to the police in May 2017, the retired paediatrician claims it took him 10 minutes to work out that murder had taken place at the Countess of Chester Hospital. The rest, they say, is history. So this is picking up on something quite interesting, which is the fact that basically Dr. Dewi Evans volunteered himself to the police and took himself away from his home area specifically to go and visit those Chester police to then engage with them. So this was a comment as part of that section by David Rose, and it's very clear Dewi Evans isn't shy about his role in the conviction of Lucy Letby, and as we'll see in this report, that's absolutely true. A little bit more, it was Evans' analysis that led to a damning chart being shown at Letby's 10-month trial 3 years ago, supposedly demonstrating that she'd been present whenever a baby died or collapsed in suspicious circumstances in the unit between June 2015 and June 2016. But David Rose then says, but did the chart tell the whole story? This is the key comment. I'm not going to put the chart up, but I am going to say that if you read the article, then what emerges is that Lucy Letby was not there when 10 out of 28 incidents took place. So I'll just let the audience reflect on that. But if we also just pick up a tiny bit of the other media reports over the weekend, I've chosen the Daily Mail here, but once it was out, the UnHerd story started to really spread. So here's the Daily Mail. Questions about Dr. Evans, a retired consultant paediatrician, were raised during Letby's trial. In an unusual move, appeal judge Lord Justice Jackson wrote to the trial judge, Mr. Justice Goss, telling how a report Dr. Evans drew up in an unrelated case had been dismissed as, quote, worthless. I thought that was a pretty outstanding comment, Mike, and one which I think everybody should pick up on, because this wasn't a member of the public making some random comment. This was coming from another senior judge. And the report being mentioned here also claimed that Evans had breached his duty as an expert by deciding the outcome he wanted and then working out an explanation to achieve it. And I'm going to say to the audience, please remember this, because when I read this sentence, it took my mind back to work we were doing in 2008. But before we get on to that, let's just have a little look at how the BBC dealt with Dr. Dewi Evans and what he had to say.
Much of the criticism of the scientific evidence used to convict Lucy Letby has focused on one man, the prosecution's main expert witness. He reviewed all the medical evidence for the babies in the case.
I went through them all and I thought, oh my word, there is something highly suspicious here. These babies should not have died.
I mean, there are people out there loudly saying this is a miscarriage of justice.
That's entirely up to them. The evidence that led to Lucy Letby being found guilty was very compelling, very consistent. Babies who were stable and in her sole care collapsed and died. And they shouldn't have collapsed, let alone died. What we had on a number of occasions was a stable baby who suddenly became unstable, crashed, failed to respond to resuscitation and died. And where there was compelling evidence of air embolus backed up by x-rays, skin changes.
What would you say directly to sceptics who are arguing that air embolism is an unproven hypothesis?
Well, I disagree with them. I disagree with them. Babies don't suddenly drop dead.
The man whose evidence helped put Letby away has no such doubts.
What is it about certain people that they are taking the side of a murderer? I think the evidence is overwhelming. I've no doubt at all that she was responsible for the deaths of these babies.
So no messing around by Dr. Dewi Evans. He's absolutely certain, and of course it's been his expert evidence that was really a major factor in the case, and appears to be going to be a major factor in the ongoing inquiry. So let's just first of all make a statement for the UK column. We think this is important because we want to recognise the families who've suffered losses. In this exclusive news report on the Lucy Letby case, UK column fully acknowledges the trauma, suffering and loss experienced by those parents who experienced the death of a loved baby at the Countess of Chester Hospital. We understand that nothing can replace their lost children or really ease their mourning for that loss. And what we now need to say is it's about justice. So whether we consider that Lucy Letby is guilty or innocent, UK column believes that we must remember that each and every one of us deserves a fair trial where no stone has been left unturned in proving our innocence or guilt. Failures in justice represent not only a threat to the life and future of Lucy Letby, but to the lives and freedoms of each and every one of us. And that also, of course, includes our children. But here we really want to recognise the emotions and the passions that are out there around this case. We recognise all that, but we feel that we must comment on areas that we think require further investigation and consideration. And this is where things get interesting, because it was that telephone call by David Rose that prompted the UK column to go back looking at work that we did in 2008 when we were looking at a child snatching case in South Wales, which involved Dr. Dewi Evans. And this is one of the articles that we wrote at the time. It's part of the article on screen, June 2008, Neath, Port Talbot, Social Services, Kidnap, Bonnie Lewis. And the start of this article was poignant at the time, is very poignant still, because it revolves around this letter, which was a little handwritten letter from Bonnie herself. It was written to her mum, her mam, her nan, grandma and her granddad. It's from June 1998. And let's just bring up the text so that we can read it for you. It says, "Dear Mam, Nan and Granddad, please help me. I am still in a lot of pain and I want to come home. I love you all so very much. No one is listening to me. I told the Guardian that I was still in pain and I wanted to talk to the judge and to go home. She told me no. She said, who's going to believe you now? Why are the social workers so nasty? And the Guardian social workers, that's the Guardian at Lisbon, social workers told me I am not allowed to tell my mother I am in pain, not allowed to tell you that I love you, not to say that I want to come home, not to talk to my friends in school about my pain, not to say I love my nan and granddad and my pain. If I say it to my mum, they will stop contact, never see you again. Julie Resnicek and The Guardian have told me I'm never coming home. I love you loads. And Nan, Grandad, I love you loads. That was the emotional letter written by a little girl that had been taken away from her parents.
And sorry, Brian, just to clarify, when we're not talking about the Guardian newspaper here, this is Guardian ad litem, which is a legal...
Her guardian social worker.
So this is somebody assigned by the state to be her guardian?
Indeed, yeah.
The background to this case was that she had been complaining about extreme stomach pains for a very long time.
This is absolutely right, and let's emphasise that by bringing a picture. This was in our first article. This is a small selection of the huge cocktail of drugs prescribed for Bonnie, some of which were not even approved for use on children. And as Mike has just said, the key issue was that Bonnie had a lot of pain. We're going to come on to the details of this, but I wanted first of all to let the wider audience here in UK and hopefully worldwide understand the plight of a little girl in pain, taken away from her loving mother by social services. And this was an incident which also involved Dr. Dewi Evans. So in the article, we listed some of the NHS authorities involved in this very sad affair: Singleton Hospital in Swansea, Neath, Port Talbot County Borough Council Social Services, Children's Legal Services, Princess of Wales Hospital Bridgend, Neath General Hospital, University Hospital Cardiff, Alder Hey Hospital Liverpool, apologies for that original spelling error there, Royal Free Hospital London, the Home Office, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, MPs and local councillors. This was a web of clinical and child protection failures in the Bonnie Lewis case, and central to that case was Dr. Dewi Evans. So let's just have a look at a little bit of a talk that I gave after that first edition, or that first article of the UK column came out. This was a talk in Port Talbot, South Wales. It was a private audience assembled by the mother and the Linda Lewis family. And I presented the facts of the case because Mum was too distraught to do it herself. We're just going to look at a few seconds just to give you a feel of what I had to say back then in August 2008. I'm going to explain a little bit about myself, and then we're going to talk about Bonnie and what's happened to her, and we'll try and we're basing it on evidence, and we're going to show you documents. This is a list of the medical situation. We had a young girl, Bonnie, who became ill. And she became so ill that Mum had to take her to the GPs, and later it took Bonnie into hospital. And it took her into a series of hospitals where a series of doctors failed to actually diagnose what was the matter with her. She was in pain, she was in constant pain, and yet they couldn't get a diagnosis and they couldn't get a treatment. And these are some of the things that were done to this little girl. Her illness wasn't diagnosed. They took a healthy appendix out and left a huge abscess, which nearly killed her. They gave her a huge cocktail of drugs. Some of the drugs given were of such quantity that if Linda had actually given her daughter those drugs, she would have killed her, or close to it. And an overdose of oral morphine was one of the prescriptions made for this little girl. They were given the runaround to doctor, to other doctor, to another doctor, to another hospital, back to the same doctor. Unbelievable incompetence. Or maybe it was orchestrated. There were lies. There were lies in what was said about her diagnosis. There were lies about the subsequent treatment. There were lies about what Linda, her mum, had actually said. And the worst thing for me when I came and looked at the documents was the fact that eventually in this horrible saga, where this little girl had endured so much, she had professional adults, doctors and social workers telling her that she wasn't in pain. It was imaginary. Now, we are very sure we know what was the matter with her, and we also know from the medical books that that condition gave rise to a huge amount of pain, a throbbing pain that goes from your chest all the way through to your back. But this girl was told it was in her mind. And these are very cruel people. So that was just part of a presentation in the evening with a select group of people, including the family, where we presented the evidence. People also spoke out on behalf of Linda and her daughter, and we also had questions. But a powerful evening, very, very sad, very tragic. And it's an evening which I will never forget. After that event, the UK column produced another article, and that article has never been seen before. We're going to show it to you today. It's on screen, October 2008, Bonnie Lewis kidnapped by the state. And it's part 2 of our investigation into what we described as this scandalous abuse of a young girl by the Neath Port Talbot State Child Protection Machinery. And we'll take a couple of excerpts out of this. We listed charges that we had made against basically the NHS, but also Neath Port Talbot Social Services, failure to diagnose, the removal of the healthy appendix, a cover-up of the severe post-operative abscess, excessive prescription of drugs, the oral morphine, incorrect discharge and prescription forms, confused and incompetent hospital referrals, examination and treatment, false denial of Bonnie's pain by doctors and social workers in favour of psychological accusations against the parents and child. So if we go on to page 2 and we just bring up a little bit more, there's more than just the incompetence and negligence. Bonnie was first admitted to Singleton Hospital on the 23rd of November 1996 via casualty with a pulse of 140 and a temperature over 100. 5 days later, she was discharged by Dr. Dewi Evans, who considered nothing wrong. On the 9th of December 1996, and still in pain, Bonnie was readmitted to Neath General Hospital. In his letter to Dr. Roberts, Bonnie's GP, dated the 9th of July 1997, Evans again ignores the medical shambles and talks about investigations. He gives no definitive diagnosis, but does put himself forward as the primary point of contact within local paediatrics. And Mike, when I've seen this again now, the similarities for me on a personal level with what's taken place around the Lucy Letby case are overwhelming. We say in this article later, this central role effectively allows him to steer the subsequent direction of Bonnie's case, labelling the mother with false psychiatric diagnosis and covering up medical misdiagnosis and incompetence. And we'll add a bit at the end of his letter. Dr. Evans stresses that he considered that the conference's decision should channel all medical referrals through the two of us. And that decision was absolutely correct. So he's happy here because he's forced an important panel looking at the case that all of the medical information is going to be channeled between two doctors, and he is one of those. And then he ends the letter by suggesting Bonnie now needs her own representative in the form of a guardian ad litem. So this is a very, very serious case, and the man at the heart of it was Dr. Dewi Evans. We also printed evidence in the form of letters, and we commented on some of these. So the third page was a tiny fraction of the evidence. If we just have a look about the flow of the story, Here we're actually mentioning the business of Dr. Roberts and Dr. Dewi Evans from Singleton Hospital. Evans is saying that nothing was wrong with Bonnie, but the mother has problems. This is alluding to Munchausen by proxy, which was being bandied around by many medical people at the time. And this one here into 1998, the 18th of February, was the date at which the social services actually took Bonnie herself. Now, if we look at some of the material here, we've taken extracts, but this is Dr. Dewi Evans on the 25th of July, 1997. He said that the conference was of the view that the threshold of significant harm, brackets emotional abuse, has been crossed. So here we've got a young girl in serious pain, but Dewi Evans is focusing on the mother and suggesting that she has got problems. He says, however, agencies are prepared to give the family the opportunity to work in partnership. The conference is making this statement, not Dr. Dewi Evans, but you see where this is leading. And then here we've got in paragraph 2, the conference recommended that the supervision of any medical support intervention is undertaken entirely under the auspices of the family GP, Dr. Roberts, and consultant paediatrician, Dr. Evans. Any referrals to other specialists, e.g. psychiatrists, should occur only after positive consultation between Dr. Roberts and Dr. Evans. So my thoughts here, Mike, are that he is absolutely controlling the case by taking control of this central part of how matters are discussed. And if we move on to other documents here, this is again dialogue between Dewi Evans and Dr. Roberts. Pleased to meet up with you. I thought I should summarise the factors that I consider significant, which makes me certain, firstly, there is significant psychological problems here, and secondly, the family dynamics are contributing to this girl's illness. So no diagnosis, but his view is that the family are to blame. And then he criticises the family because they took action to try and get a diagnosis for Bonnie. They took her in a van to Alderhay Children's Hospital in the middle of the night instead of arranging admission to a local hospital. This is both reckless and irresponsible. But here he is commenting on the actions of a mother who by now was desperate that neither GPs or hospitals could actually deal with the girl's illness and produce a diagnosis. And at the end of this paragraph, Dr. Dewi Evans is now saying, I can only describe this as attention seeking by proxy. And this is an attempt to label Linda Lewis, the mother, as having Munchausen by proxy, that this was a psychological issue of the mother, not a physical issue of the girl. I find this, Mike, particularly seeing it again after all these times and in light of the Lucy Letby case, I find this appalling. So we'll continue through. The well-being of Bonnie in the Royal Free Hospital. Children normally relax when their mother is around and various physical symptoms become less. For them to get worse when she was around and improve when she was not there is very telling and a consistent feature suggesting a psychosomatic problem. But of course, this is comment by individuals. This isn't a diagnosis by a psychiatrist on the mother. This is comment within the NHS and the medical sphere. And this goes on. We've got another document here between Dr. Dewi Evans and here he says he's writing regarding the latest developments of Bonnie. She's missed 2 appointments. She's not at school, but is having some informal home tuition. Social services were trying to get Bonnie to school, even though she was in pain. And what is being said again, I feel that there are now very strong grounds for suggesting that Bonnie's health is being avoidably impaired by a family. If she's unwell, she should be seeing the appropriate medical specialist. The option has been refused, but it's still open. That option was refused by the family because by this stage they had no trust in Dr. Dewi Evans or the medical system. And it goes on here with, again, a key attempt, in my personal opinion, by Dr. Dewi Evans to take control of this case and the family and the girl by he's suggesting exploring the possibility of appointing a guardian ad litem to represent Bonnie. And he says he'd welcome your advice regarding the appropriate procedures. So here he is at the centre of the case with a girl in extreme pain, no diagnosis, and he is controlling what is happening. So if we come into the key facts, just to end really with a summary, Bonnie suffered severe pain consistently undiagnosed by Dr. Dewi Evans and others. He was essentially, in my opinion, failing in his clinical care, and he deliberately labels the mother as Munchausen by proxy. This is the term being used at that time in the medical profession, a diagnosis which he wasn't fully qualified to make. Bonnie's mother, however, was continually striving and failing to get a diagnosis for Bonnie's pain. Dr. Dewi Evans takes control of the child protection team, effectively blocking the mother from independent medical advice. And if we carry on through, Bonnie's mother and grandfather eventually take Bonnie to Florida, where they do achieve a diagnosis, and that is Zollinger's disease, and this is multiple ulceration of the gut, intensely painful. But what happens is that Neath Port Talbot Social Services arrive with US police. They snatch Bonnie in Florida from her mother and the grandfather. The mother has now become the risk, and that girl is then brought back to the UK.
On a false passport, if I remember rightly.
On a false passport, Mike, because the application carried out by the local authority was flawed and deceptive, so that even the Home Office issuing the passport was not fully aware what was going on. But this is something which is so cruel. Bonnie was taken from her mother, extremely distraught, still in pain. She was flown back to the UK, placed in a psychiatric facility, and told the pain was imaginary. And then Neath Port Talbot Social Services permanently removed Bonnie from her mother in family court proceedings. So what is the ultimate irony? Well, the mother achieves the diagnosis in America, but once the social services have that diagnosis for Zollinger's disease, they treat the girl using the diagnosis obtained by the mother, and the mother is then falsely branded as having psychiatric problems. Bonnie's taken away, and Linda Lewis never sees her daughter again. And Dr. Dewi Evans, central to all the key decisions of the team around Bonnie Lewis. Now, our article was never published because we were gagged by Neath Port Talbot at the time for the material that we wanted to publish. So I'm going to say that as soon as we started to report the real facts of the Bonnie Lewis case and Dr. Dewi Evans' failings, Neath Port Talbot local authority threatened the UK column with legal action. So that is the end of our special report today, but I'm going to say that key for us is the fact that when we go back to 2008 and look at that dreadful case and the sheer cruelty as to how Bonnie's case was handled, the man who was making key decisions or failing to make the right decisions was the man to be used 17 years later as an expert witness in a highly sensitive case around Lucy Letby. Ben, I can see you. I can see the expression on your face as I've been delivering this. Can I just ask for some brief comment for the audience, please?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Hello, everybody. I just find this incredibly distressing, really, and it's so depressingly predictable in a way. The amount of times now that we hear of the people, the institutions who are supposed to be caring for us, safeguarding us, our children, our society, being the ones who are actually inflicting abuse, it just boggles the mind. It really does.
Yes, Ben, let's leave that then for now. I'm quite certain we're going to be coming back to this in the future.